Courtside Conversations.
Courtside Conversations.
The Roland-Garros Tennis Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Courtside Conversations, the official Roland-Garros podcast. My name is Gigi Salmon, and together with special guests, we are going to be keeping you company throughout the year. We like to call it tennis with a French twist, with the second Grand Slam of the year never too far from our thoughts. And with Roland-Garros 2024 having just come to an end and Wimbledon around the corner, I'm absolutely delighted to say that with me today, 17-time Grand Slam champion across doubles and mixed and former world number one in doubles, Mark Woodforde. How are you, Mark? Welcome to the podcast.
Bonjour, Gigi. I feel like that was bonjour. We said that several times just recently, but it's good to see you again. Thank you for having me on.
Now, how is your Grand Slam recovery going? Because however good a Grand Slam is, it's quite brutal and the hours are long. It's quite intense. So how's your recovery been?
Recovery is exactly what it needs to achieve. Recovery, as a player, it's amazing. I guess you just prepare your body physically and mentally. After a Grand Slam finishes, there are occasions that you play that following week, but you get burnt by that decision because inevitably it's tough to back around. So I think through experience, when I was playing, which was a long time ago, took the time off, the week off at least after to recover. But it's the same as commentating. I mean, if anyone thinks that we just sit there with a microphone and yap away, well, we do that, but it takes its toll. So I went in search of a beach, sun, and good food. I ended up heading to Barcelona, and I haven't had much luck because it rained for 2 of the 3 days that I was there. But the recovery process has still been taking place. I haven't really engaged in that much conversations with people. I've just really recovered, had a massage. It's kind of like when you're playing because you do get beat up, right?
Oh, wow. I love this. You've had a massage. You've gone to Barcelona. So, you know what? We really appreciate the fact that it hasn't even been a week and you're speaking to us, you're getting back to work. And in terms of your Roland-Garros, how was Roland-Garros 2024 for you?
So people tuning into this may think, oh, yeah, he's just saying this because it's on the RG podcast. But, for years, I elevate RG to the top of the Grand Slams for me. Obviously, I have a personal connection having played and won at the 4 slams. The Australian Open is my homeland. Wimbledon is, being Australian, and because of that grass, you kind of feel there's this historical nature to it. You're a champion if you get to play and win there. But for me, Roland-Garros now is probably my most favourite Grand Slam because I feel like every tournament has a ceiling, but Roland-Garros over the last decade and probably longer have actually the quest to actually just keep rising. And it's not that they've reached the ceiling, but everything has improved. I really, really have enjoyed going to Roland-Garros as a player. Well, probably as a player was always tough because a challenge on clay. But I think Roland-Garros is a sensational it is my favourite Grand Slam now. Just the test, the physical, the mental side, the facilities now are top rate. Look at it. We've got the 2 roofs on the courts, and who knew that we'd be using those roofs so well in the first week of the event just gone by. So I really enjoy every aspect of Roland-Garros.
I do want to talk about your playing time at Roland-Garros, but talking about the evolution of the tournament. This year, we saw 75,000 people through the gates in the first 5 days. There were 10,000 people on Susan Longland for qualifying the first time. We had these really emotional goodbyes to Dominic Thiem and Diego Schwartzman, who at separate times going to be hanging up the rackets. It was a real event. It wasn't just qualifying and people wandering in. It was busy and it was packed just from the start of qualifying.
Even though it was raining outside, but a lot of the French players got to play inside under the roofs. They've got, the abundance sounds like that there's too many. They have a plethora of players that are coming up now, led still by Gael Monfils and Manarino are the two highest ranked Frenchmen. But then you've got this mix of players underneath that, I mean, safe to say they're in pretty good shape right now, I think.
Yeah, no, and the atmosphere is absolutely stunning. You talked about the challenge of clay. So 17 Grand Slam titles across doubles and mixed. I want to say but just two of them in Paris, one in the doubles, one in the mixed. What was so difficult for you in terms of playing here and just getting over that finish line?
Well, apart from the fact of being Australian, and if I throw in there that I'm red hair freckles, that's less so. But being Australian, I think, was the first challenge. So learning how to play on the surface and get comfortable. That was always the challenge in singles and doubles. I mean, I did pretty well there in singles. I'm at fourth round on a few occasions, but doubles, I actually think, in all honesty, Todd and I certainly thought it. I thought Roland-Garros would be one of the first Grand Slams that we ticked the box with. It ended up being the last Grand Slam, and it came like at death's door for us. There was so much heartbreak for us at Roland-Garros, and I think when you are the number one team, and look back and think almost a decade that we led, we're sitting up at the top of the men's doubles, and yet we struggled at Roland-Garros. And I think the main reason is, Todd and I, in our period, we weren't the tallest guys. We didn't own big booming serves. And on clay, that made us a bit more vulnerable. On the other surfaces of the three Grand Slams, the courts were a little bit quicker. And so our serve wasn't as vulnerable as it was. We didn't feel as exposed like we did on clay. So I guess given that clay, is a real mix of being able to patience, attack, and mostly defense, but it also helped returning. You couldn't just serve your way through a match. So because we didn't have those big serves, trying to position it into the corner, that just provided too much time for our opponents to actually return, hit really high quality returns against us. So wasn't through trying, wasn't through preparation. And me, who lived almost a decade. I mean, my residence was in Monte Carlo, so I really enjoyed this kind of European lead up to Roland-Garros. I wasn't ever frightened of clay, but it tortured us over the years. And I don't know if it was the last year because we just knew I had made the announcement that I was retiring. Whether that just loosened everything up in that final year of 2000, but we got out of some really tough matches along the way, as normally you do anyway. But in other years, we weren't able to extract ourselves out of difficult situations. In the final year, we did, and hallelujah, we finally got it.
You'd got the mixed title there in 95, but can you remember, with all those emotions, and you'd said that you were going to retire, can you remember the emotions of when you finally won and you were champions in Roland-Garros?
I remember probably walking out onto the court. I remember being so tense. And look, Todd and I, we're pretty chatty. We're good communicators. We were always like that when we played. The tension, it was like there's something in your throat. It was just getting ready in the locker room and then walking down to the area before your names are called out to the court. I mean, it was just, really, really, really tight. But Todd and Todd had a tendency to become a little more struck with nerves than me. I just didn't show it as much. But I remember as they called out Paul Harhouse and Sandon Stolly onto the court, Todd said to me, "Did you just see Sandon's face?" And I said, I just kind of shook my head because I was struggling to even say something. But he said he was so white. He was white as a ghost. He said, "I really think he's super, super nervous." I was like, "Oh, okay." I remember walking onto the court. We did the coin toss. And in the 5-minute warm-up, the first ball that I hit to Sandon, the ball didn't even land within the confines of what the Philippe Chatrier court is, the biggest court that we play on during the year. But his first ball that I fed to him didn't even land on the clay. It landed in the first row of the stands. I was like, that's a little weird. I hit another ball to him. It hit the bottom of the net. So I walked over to Todd and I said, "Have a look at this." I hit another ball. It didn't even come near me. So it kind of confirmed that Sandon was feeling a whole lot worse than what Mark Woodforde and Todd Woodbridge were. So that was how we operated. We focused on Sandon Stolly in key moments of the match. And, we got ourselves into that winning position, 6-4, 5-4. Thank goodness it was not me that was serving. And again, I go back to generally, I think I was a bit... I had the more calm moments in those big moments. Not to say that Todd was a bundle of nerves ever, but it just, I think in the past probably would have been a bit safer if I was serving for the match rather than Todd. But I could not move. I was just paralysed up at net, and I didn't want to hit a ball. And, Gigi, when you're playing doubles, it's 50-50, right? The partner gets the serve in, and you as the net man are supposed to try and help out. It's like when they return the ball, once it goes over the net, you up at net, you're supposed to try and get involved if you can. I was like, Todd, I didn't even say anything. I couldn't say anything. I was just happy that he got the serve in, and I was not going to go near the ball because I just didn't want to make a mistake. This is on the precipice of finally winning Roland-Garros. It was the last jewel in the crown for us. I didn't touch a ball in the last game, but I tell you, I jumped up into Todd's arms and celebrated like it was like to no end. The relief was just amazing. We won a lot together. But that was right there was probably the most joyful and relieving moment in our career.
Oh, I love it. And I'm glad it worked out well. For one thing, because the rest of the podcast had been a little bit sad if that hadn't had the ending that it did. So onwards we go to Roland-Garros 2024. And in the last few years coming in to Roland-Garros, it's all been, well, the men, we know what's really going to happen in the men, and there's a very small pool of people, and it's probably one person, and that's it. This was a complete role reversal. So I want to start with the women, and it was about Iga Świątek. Yes, people could challenge her, but it was pretty much everyone else against Iga Świątek for the title.
Now she knows what Rafa Nadal has probably gone through in the last decade and a half of entering Roland-Garros in particular. And there are contenders, aren't there, in the women's game? There are women who have those big games that can bother, penetrate the great defence and offence of Świątek. And we saw that the way that the draw, panned out with a couple of players that were returning to tennis and into some form, and that one, was offered in the second round in the match against Osaka. But great champions again. They it's the experience that they call upon in those moments of crisis that they are able to control their emotions, and I'm not saying that Naomi Osaka isn't a great champion, but probably clay has been her weaker surface in her career, and I think I was one of them. I certainly was tuned in for that particular match that on that day. Osaka played one of her best matches, she stepped up to the challenge. But I think it was more for her about her return to tennis. Swiatek's just trying to actually survive as the number one player and to go for the third title. But, I mean, it was a powerhouse matchup. And once again, the champion stood firm and stood tall.
Well, let's have a listen to what Iga Swiatek took away from that match where she was match point down in the second round against Naomi Osaka.
Well, for sure, it gives me the feeling that I should always believe in myself, that I can find my tennis even if I'm in big trouble, and with this tennis, fight back. So it gives me confidence, and we'll see, I'll always try my best no matter what the score is. So sometimes it's going to end up like that. Sometimes I'm going to lose. But when you're trying your best, it's always the best solution because you have no regrets. And you can turn, tournaments into something like that.
Naomi Osaka didn't help the rest of the draw because Iga Swiatek dropped 17 games, was match point down to Naomi Osaka. Following that win, she dropped 17 games in 5 rounds.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? And to hear her say, you've got to give your best effort. And that's what does shine, watching Swiatek, many, many times as one of the best. And the guys do it as well. We saw it in the men's draw even this year. In those moments, they're not frightened to put everything out there. They don't try to win and hope for the other person to miss. I mean, on that match point, I'm thinking there was a backhand winner cross-court. I think whether it was off a return or a rally evolved, but the fact that she just, ripped a winner match point down it is quite amazing. But they put themselves on the line. They're not frightened to lose in those moments because they understand that if they're going to shake hands, they've lost the match. It probably means that more often than not, they've forced the opponent to elevate their game. It's not because they played badly. I mean, it was a sensational matchup against Osaka, but as we've seen historically, when someone goes on to win the title, you can look back at their pathway, and quite often most of the time, there is a match where they have had to deal with an opponent who has just clearly played phenomenal, or they've had to fight back from match point down, or they've had some adversity, but that adversity has actually ripen them to go on and win the title. And as you said, I mean, it was just devastating. I kind of pitied, her next round opponent in the third round, and even after that, because Swiatek was just going to come out from the first game, from the first point, and it was going to be 100%. And she played the rest of the tournament almost like that.
When you ask people what makes her so good, especially on the clay, they talk about sort of the extreme grip she has, the amount of spin she gets on the ball, her intensity. But the one thing for me that comes up time and time again is her movement, with people saying she is quite possibly one of the best movers in the game on this surface.
Probably doesn't get enough credit for the movement because we see her on the court very focused, under that cap, head down. But it's the power game that I think it does speak volumes. But in order to actually stripe the ball into the open court, hitting winners, you've got to get yourself into position first, and that comes from being in good condition, but obviously movement is a key factor there. So it's something that we're probably. It doesn't get spoken about often enough as an attribute that is part of her repertoire.
Something that I feel I've been talking to a lot of people about this year, especially as we came onto the clay, is there a big 3 or a big 4 in women's tennis? So your 3 is Aryna Sabalenka, Elena Rybakina, Iga Swiatek, and then there's Coco Gauff, and there are those saying she has to be in a big 4 because she's a US Open champion, but others saying no, there's just a couple of things that aren't quite there yet. Would you say, if you had to, there was a big three or a big four at this stage?
Yeah, look, I think the big three, I understand that concept, because with Sabalenka and Rybakina and Iga, they all hit the ball big, right? I mean, it is from the serve, from the first ball that, their opponent loses a bit of weight of shot or length, and they just finish the point off. Coco Gauff's game's not quite based on the power. There is the movement, her athleticism, that they're, I'm not saying that the other ladies don't have depth, but I think Coco, maybe there's a bit more to her game. There is that, she's out there playing doubles, which Gigi, I'm always going to love someone that's playing singles and doubles most weeks. So I, kind of embrace Coco. So I think sometimes it takes that type of player who's developing their game, who maybe has an extra string in their game. It maybe takes just a little bit longer to evolve. So Coco might not be there just yet, but she's certainly hovering around, and I just like the investment that she's making into her game as well, with the recent hiring, and I think a real positive move working with someone like Brad Gilbert. I think can pay dividends. I see her there is this long range view for Coco Gauff, so she might not be there just yet, but she's going to challenge those three, and that it's. I mean, it's always nice when that draw comes out to some of these big tournaments, and you're always looking to see where they're positioned in the draw and potential matchups.
And she's now a Grand Slam champion in doubles and singles, and she's still so young. But then we had this strange situation with the men's competition coming in. Novak Djokovic, well, he wasn't even sure where he was at, so we had no clue. And then you had Alcaraz with his arm, was that sort of mental or physical, and Yannick Sinner with his hip, who hadn't played in Rome. And Daniil Medvedev, yes, he had won Rome the year before, but he doesn't like the clay because it's dirty and clay gets everywhere. And Andrei Rublev had been in hospital after Madrid. So we had this very strange situation where you could sort of put a little question mark by most of the members of the top 10.
It was like we were rubbing our hands. This is going to be great, because we're not going with. Sadly, in a way, you're not like checking Nadal off. Give the trophy to him before we get there, before matches start, type of thing. I found it just brilliant. Watching the clay season unfold, and then arriving and. Yeah, there was a myriad of names that you could put in there. For me, I've really gone or been on the Tsitsipas boat or train. Probably train goes quicker. Ever since he had that fantastic win, the first win that he had over Federer at the Australian Open, I thought the way that he played that particular match, and his brand as well. But we've been kind of disappointed over a period of time. He just hasn't been able to, come up with the goods at Roland-Garros. Mind you, in the current generation, he's not alone there, right? But I thought this year could have been the year for Stefanos, winning in Monte Carlo, reaching the final a week later in Barcelona, losing to Ruud. They reversed the result. But I thought there was, this being open, an opportunity for someone like Tsitsipas to work his way through. But, you just never know how these tournaments unfold once the draw comes out, and how they're playing. The early rounds, you look at Zverev having to find his best form from round one against Nadal, and but he was able to still work his way through and almost got there until Alcaraz found that little bit more on the final day.
It was so good to have Rafa Nadal there, because throughout the clay season it had been so stop-start. I can do it, I can't do it. In Madrid, he said, look, if I feel like this when I get to Paris, I'm not going to play because I don't feel right. And then everyone was quite worried again. And then Rome, and he's not there. And so it was wonderful to have him there. But what a first round to get. You come up against one of the form players who just won Rome in Sasha Zverev. It was, I know for Nadal, it's all about just being able to put himself on the court in a good situation. But I mean, that was tough, wasn't it, to get that in the first round?
Absolutely. And probably one of the worst ones for him to face in the type of game I'm talking about. That Zverev is a proactive player when he is on. I'd love to see him play every match, so quite proactive, go out there and use his weapons to win. But I'm sure Zverev had something to prove as well. But it's a type of game that can displace Nadal. Like he's searching for rhythm. Zverev, when he's on, he takes rhythm away from you. He finishes points quickly behind the serve. He's not shy. Again, when he's feeling good, he moves to net. So all of these areas are assets for Zverev. Tough one for Nadal, certainly when he's searching for form. But I tell you, Gigi, I thought it was one of the best second sets in this 2024 return of Nadal. I think the second set was the best set of tennis I've seen him play. Unfortunately, it came against an opponent who still was able to match him.
And Djokovic withdrawing would lead to Jannik Sinner getting to number one maybe a little bit quicker than he would have done. And he said, it's not the way I would have wanted. You want to go out there and win it. You want to hit that shot. And I am now world number one. But at the same time, thoroughly deserves to be in that position in terms of what he has done, not just from the start of this year, but you've got to sort of roll back to the back end of 2023.
I mean, I saw that the Davis Cup final, the matchup that he played, those two played. It is breathtaking. I think as commentators, we're generally up a little higher in our booths. Fantastic view, nonetheless. But when you get at court level, when you see these guys in these big matches, the velocity that they hit with, it really is takes your breath away. The workload, the input that Sinner. And Darren Cahill is a good mate of mine, and in talks with him, he has just said, he's a great kid. He's devoted 100% to actually becoming the best tennis player possible. There was never any he wants to be number one. It was to be the best tennis player possible, and clearly, that end result is reaching number one. So I wondered whether the danger match, Gigi, might have come for Jannik, though, after hearing the news that he had reached number one, that going out the next day, because as you pointed out, generally players elevate to number one, rise to number one after they've won generally a major title. So to have it during the tournament is a little unusual. So my concern was, him coming out and just being, maybe not as tight or as focused. But again, that disappeared because I think he had to come out and play Dimitrov in the next match, wasn't it? Yeah, took care of him straight sets.
He was taking care of everyone, and then this wonderful rivalry that's building with Sinner and Alcaraz. And they're such good friends, and they shake hands before they come out. But so interesting that Alcaraz himself is only 21, but in their match it was Sinner who was cramping, and then afterwards Alcaraz said, "I was also cramping, but I could see he was cramping, and I had learnt from the year before against Novak Djokovic." And you talked about going to 5 sets. I think taking it up to the final, he's 11-1 when it comes to 5 sets, Alcaraz. I mean, it shows the mental strength, and it shows also at the age of 21 how he continues to learn and to develop and to grow as a player.
Exactly. I mean, look, we never stop learning as a tennis player, whether you're at the beginning of your career, the journey, if you've got, you've announced your retirement, you're still taking on board. That's, that's the way it should go. So great maturity. But sometimes you've got to go through those experiences of what was the term that Juan Carlos Ferrero used? Like you've got to live in pain at times.
Sounds awful, doesn't it? Don't want to live in pain.
It does.
You have to suffer. You have to suffer.
You have to suffer. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to suffer through it. You're aware that you're going to have those moments, and sometimes they happen off the court. On the court, you learn by them, their experiences.
Certainly is. I mean, he's still only 21. He has achieved so much. But he was asked after he won the title, which of his achievements stands above the rest and why?
Winning the US Open when I reached for the first time the number one, something that I dream since I started playing tennis. Getting my first Grand Slam, so it was pretty special. But honestly, the way that I won Wimbledon, beating Novak Djokovic in 5 sets, has been a great achievement for me. And right now, lifting the Roland-Garros trophy, knowing everything that I've been through the last month with the injuries and all that stuff, I don't know. Probably this one. Probably this one is the moment that I'm really proud about myself, because everything that I've done the last month just to be ready for this tournament.
I mean, it's a pretty good CV for someone who's 21. He mentioned in there beating Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon. We are on to the grass. How did you feel when you put the clay shoes to one side and you got out and got onto the grass?
Well, in my time, the transition was I believe, a lot more difficult because the grass was grass. It was real grass. It's not the grass of today. The transition for us back then, having to play the next week. Obviously, the calendar was different. We only had 2 weeks to prepare for Wimbledon, not 3. So that forced a lot of players to compete the week after finishing at Roland-Garros. So it was literally getting on the train that night, travelling over to London and trying to get onto the grass the following day. The process that we went through, and I would think most Australians were, it's not imperative to try and get on the court and hit tennis balls, because it's in our DNA. It's part of our DNA in Australia with the grass. So you don't lose that idea that it's a lower bounce. It's shooting through. You're probably going to get a bit of a dodgy bounce as well. But we would spend the first part of the following week wearing our grass court shoes, because the tread is different. But we would be not panicked if we didn't get to hit tennis balls. But our trainer would just get us onto a grass surface and work on movement. Movement being lower in your position to return serve when you're up at net. And just these accelerations, because you would serve and volley. You remember serve and volley?
A little bit.
Doesn't really happen now. But we used to serve and volley everything, first and second serve. And so your body, having been for the previous 8 weeks on clay, where you're not quite as low, the ball is bouncing higher, the points are longer. So you had to kind of quickly change into points are shorter. There's a bit more explosive, dynamic involved, but movement is incredibly important on grass. So really that first week was to try and get the whole mindset of the process of how you're going to be playing at Wimbledon. And generally the week after, because we always played Queen's Club, the week after we'd have it off. Bit of a recovery process, but just really trying to tinker with, a few more backhand slices. You're staying a little closer to the baseline to return serve compared to, the 2 months on clay where you're giving yourself so much room to return serve. So just some minor adjustments. But today, and I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of it, Gigi. I don't think the transition is fraught with too much difficulty. I think basically it's just a colour change these days.
Okay, that's interesting.
The grass is just, it allows for the transition to go a lot more smoother than what it used to be. And in fact, there are times I do arrive at Wimbledon, and if I am commentating on matches and I kind of, some players, and I think, oh, gee, yeah, I saw them play at Roland-Garros, and they're playing exactly the same way. That they're not playing grass court tennis, but that's because grass has changed from the times that when I was competing. So I think it is a lot more friendlier for the players. So I guess leading into, is it possible for someone like Alcaraz, having won Roland-Garros, to end up with a trophy in July? I think he doesn't even need to be, if it's too difficult physically for him to get and play a tournament before Wimbledon. I don't see it being an issue. I think he would be able to, in when Wimbledon starts in a fortnight later, he still could be holding the trophy as defending champion.
And he was like a sponge last year going into Queens. He just soaked everything up. He learned every match, and suddenly he's winning everything. It feels different for Iga Świątek. She is vulnerable. If we're making predictions, I'm really bad with predictions. But personally, I don't think she's in my top 3 or 4. She is, I don't know why so much, but she is more vulnerable on the grass.
So an aspect that in general tennis terms, and in particular on grass, one of the most underrated and underused shot is a backhand slice. It's a weapon, but a weapon I think we use it as a term is because players, the way tennis is about shot making and winners, the backhand slice is not where you hit a winner. It's a strategic shot, but it sets the point up. It teases the opponent. It confounds the opponent. And it provides the player time to actually recover. When used in the correct way, it allows the player to recover back into the point. That's the one thing with Świątek that I think if she were to take, and I hope she's aware of her other the challenges around her opponents. I have a feeling that that's a shot that Coco Gauff has been working on and will continue to work on. That is maybe there in her game that we might get to see a bit of it on the grass in the coming month. But yeah, that's just the one. Iga's game is certainly built around the movement and the serve and the big forehand and backhand. I'd maybe like to see her use a backhand slice, and if someone can use it against her, I think that could be a bit of a tough one for her to handle.
And someone who's got all of those shots and will have the emotional vote is Ons Jabeur, because we've seen her heart ache and her heart break in 2 Wimbledon finals. She's spoken how much it means to her. She has the game that is set up for the surface. But you've spoken yourself. You feel maybe you won that Roland-Garros doubles title because the pressure was off and you were retiring. It just feels she wants it so badly. It's almost to her detriment.
Exactly. You can want matches way too much. Let alone tournaments. You can't win a slam in the first week. You can certainly lose it. And Ons is a very dangerous player. And I go back to our last Australian winner of the women's singles, Ash Barty, and it was a delight to watch her play. To see that backhand slice just carve her opponents up. So I think Ons kind of there's similarities there to our own Ash Barty, but I think again for someone like Swiatek, it's the draw and just working her way in. The longer she stays in the tournament and acclimates, the more dangerous she'll become.
Now, I want to kind of go full circle and end with the doubles, because for Andy Murray, we don't know exactly when the career will come to an end. That's up to him when he feels the time is right. But we do know that for the first time at a Grand Slam, he has entered the doubles competition with brother Jamie.
You're not going to hear anything negative from me about someone who's playing singles and doubles at a Grand Slam. I certainly wish it, occurred a lot more often than it does. But yeah, we're in an Olympic cycle year, so I think that's whetted his taste buds. The prospect of trying to get out there and play in the Olympics, if it's still possible, with Jamie as well. They're going to be dangerous pair for sure, because the added bonus, they have the crowd support as well. So let's hope that they maybe get out and play in one of the build-up to events to Wimbledon. Practice makes perfect.
Mark Woodforde, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks, Gigi.
So that's it from Courtside Conversations. Thank you so much for your company. When we return, the grass will be gone and the Olympics and US Hardcourt Series will be fast approaching. So we look forward to your company for that. Take care and bye for now.